Ed Gale, a man who stood just over 3 feet tall, cast a shadow that loomed much larger than his height ever could. Born on August 23, 1963, in the small town of Plainwell, Michigan, Edward Gale came into this world with a rare condition: dwarfism. But from the earliest days of his life, it was clear that the physical limitations imposed by his condition would never restrict the size of his dreams. He didn't just want to live a quiet life in the Midwest. He wanted to be a star, a performer, a storyteller, a bringer of joy and mischief. And that's exactly what he became. Ed's childhood was both challenging and unique. Growing up in a small, tight-knit town like Plainwell meant that everyone knew everyone. And they certainly knew Ed. While some might have felt dwarfed by their own insecurity or uncertainty, Ed radiated confidence. His spirit was irrepressible. He was that rare kind of person who could make the entire room laugh without trying too hard, who could find humor in darkness and light in struggle. Those who knew him back then recall a boy who, even before he ever set foot in Hollywood, had a performer's instinct, quick with a joke, even quicker with a smirk, and never afraid to poke fun at himself if it meant putting others at ease. In high school, while many of his peers were focused on sports or prepping for college, Ed was consumed with something else entirely: possibility. He spent hours in the library poring over books about film, acting, and the golden age of Hollywood. He devoured stories about legends like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, physical performers who turned the language of the body into an art form. He saw himself in them, even if the world didn't yet see a place for someone like him on the big screen. At the age of 20, Ed decided he couldn't wait any longer. With just $41 in his pocket and a dream burning a hole in his heart, he hitchhiked his way to California. No plan, no safety net, just a passion for performance and a wild belief that the universe might meet him halfway. It was a leap that most people wouldn't dare take. But then again, Ed Gale was not most people. Hollywood wasn't easy. Not for anyone, and certainly not for someone like Ed. Roles for actors with dwarfism were few and far between, and most were cartoonish, one-note, or just plain insulting. But Ed didn't let that break his spirit. Instead, he leaned into the hustle. He auditioned for anything and everything. He said yes to roles others turned down. He met people. He made people laugh. He made people remember him. Slowly, doors began to open. Not always the doors he wanted, but enough to get a foot in. Then came Howard the Duck in 1986. The Marvel superhero comedy may have been a critical flop at the time, but it was a turning point in Ed's life. He was cast in the title role, not the voice, but the body inside the suit. It was physically grueling work, long hours in uncomfortable costumes, acting in sync with the voiceover that would be added later. But Ed didn't complain. He was thrilled. Here he was, starring in a movie produced by George Lucas himself. He knew the critics might scoff, but he also knew that for someone like him, this was history. That role opened the floodgates. From that point on, Ed worked steadily. He brought to life characters that, while small in stature, made a massive impact on the screen, and none more so than Chucky, the murderous doll from the Child's Play franchise. While Brad Dourif provided Chucky's sinister voice, it was Ed Gale's physical performance that gave Chucky his terrifyingly lifelike presence. The movements, the twisted, playful gestures, the eerily human-like gait. That was all Ed. He didn't just wear the suit, he became the character. In a franchise that spanned decades and became one of horror's most iconic sagas, Ed's performance was instrumental. When fans screamed in theaters, when they had nightmares of dolls creeping across their bedrooms at night, they were reacting to Ed's uncanny ability to make the unreal feel all too real. And despite the gruesome nature of the character, Ed had nothing but fun bringing him to life. He loved talking about it at conventions, relishing in the ironic fact that he scared millions of people while being one of the warmest souls you'd ever meet. But Ed's resume didn't stop at Chucky and Howard the Duck. Over the course of his life, He appeared in more than 130 films, television shows, and commercials. From Spaceballs to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, from sitcom cameos to dramatic scenes, Ed left a mark on every project he touched. He was the kind of actor directors loved to work with, hardworking, professional, and always ready with a joke between takes. His presence on set was like a burst of adrenaline. He kept things light, even when the subject matter wasn't. Off-screen, Ed was just as unforgettable. According to his niece, Ed Gale, he was the fun uncle, a title he wore like a badge of honor. He wasn't the kind of relative you'd only see on holidays. No, Ed was the one who showed up with stories from Hollywood, with inside jokes, with prank gifts, and a mischievous twinkle in his eye. He had an infectious laugh, the kind that could lift your spirits even on your darkest days. And he was, by all accounts, wonderfully weird. He had a love for 7-Eleven hot dogs, smothered in what many would describe as an offensive amount of ketchup. He enjoyed telling long, winding stories that made you wait for the punchline. And just when you thought he'd lost the plot, he'd reel you in with a hilarious twist. He cheated at cribbage with pride and DJ'd at the Plainwell roller rink, like it was Madison Square Garden. These quirky details were the heartbeat of who Ed was. Someone who never stopped being unapologetically himself. He also had strong opinions, many of which he shared freely and often. He had an inexplicable hatred for comedian and political commentator Bill Maher, which he never fully explained but always stood by. It became one of those inside jokes in the family. If Maher's name came up, you'd better brace yourself for a good old-fashioned Ed rant. His career may have taken him to the bright lights of Los Angeles, but Ed never forgot where he came from. He carried Plainwell with him everywhere. It was in his stories, in his values, in his love for underdogs and weirdos. He loved the town that raised him, even if he'd traded its snowy sidewalks for sunny studio lots. And as much as he loved acting, Ed's true passion was connection. He thrived at conventions, where fans lined up to meet the man behind the madness. He adored the energy of those events, the cosplay, the chaos, the camaraderie. He'd sign autographs, pose for selfies, crack jokes, and make every fan feel like they were the only person in the room. He didn't take himself too seriously, but he took them seriously. He understood what it meant to be seen, especially by someone who had always felt invisible. When the news of Ed's passing broke, the internet lit up with tributes. Fans, co-stars, directors, and convention-goers all came forward to share their memories. Some recalled the moment they first saw Child's Play and felt that spine-tingling chill. Others remembered meeting Ed at a con, being surprised by his humility and humor. Many shared photos, notes, and stories that painted a picture of a man who gave generously of his time, his laughter, and his weird, wonderful spirit. His niece Case's post was both heartbreaking and hilarious. Two emotions Ed had always blended so masterfully. In it, she wrote, "It is with a heavy heart and a surprisingly light coffin, see what I did there, that we announce the sudden passing of our uncle, Ed Gale. Ed Gale has taken his final bow and is now headlining in the afterlife." It was the kind of send-off Ed himself would have loved, irreverent, emotional, and filled with inside jokes. She continued, "Ed hitched a ride to California when he was 20 years old, with $41 and a dream, and he never looked back. And that's the truth. He didn't look back. He kept moving forward, toward roles that scared him, toward places that needed his light, toward people who needed to laugh. His story reminds us that success isn't about fame or fortune. It's about impact. It's about how many people you touch, how many hearts you open, how many smiles you leave behind. Ed may not have been a household name in the traditional sense, but to horror fans, to his family, to his friends, and to every stranger he made feel special, he was unforgettable.